Hi, guys. Okay, so breaking news Jeffrey Epstein is dead. I say that with quotes because I'm not convinced he is dead. So, I'm going to start with the most important thing that I want you guys all to think about and to remember because I know a lot of times when news breaks, people overreact and people get all worked up because they don't understand what's really going on behind the scenes. And a lot of people were freaking out yesterday and, very upset that Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, committed suicide because we all know that anyone that is about to testify on the Clintons or has good dirt on the Clintons ends up dead. The list, I think, there's dozens of people on the list, and I think the list is over 100. Anyways, so, a lot of people were really upset and assuming that the Clintons got to Jeffrey Epstein and killed him before he had a chance to testify against them. Okay, I want to start off by reminding you about what Q talks about and what Q says. Q says, we have it all. Q also says, nothing can stop what's coming. Q also says, patriots are in control. Q also talks about how you are watching a movie. Q also talks about what makes for a good movie, good actors. And Q says to enjoy the show. So, if you trust Q and you believe all those things that Q has told us, then it doesn't matter if Jeffrey Epstein is dead or not. Because the White Hats are in control, and if he's dead, that's because the White Hats wanted him dead. And again, like I said earlier, and I'll get more into this later in the video, I'm not totally convinced that he is dead. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for now, I want to read Joe M's tweet at Storm is Upon Us that he sent out right after the news broke of Jeff Epstein's death. This is what he wrote. We figured out some magic to protect the president. You telling me they couldn't protect the second most prominent deep state target in the world? He's more valuable than Assange. No 24-hour armed military guard? Forget it. Hashtag Patriots in control. So what Joe is saying is that if you think that our guys, the good guys, the Patriots, the White Hats, Team Q, wasn't able to protect Jeffrey Epstein, you're kidding yourself. And the fact that Joe stated that Jeffrey Epstein is a bigger witness than Julian Assange that was even a little surprising to me. I mean, I guess it's not so surprising. He was running one of the, if not the biggest elite pedophile rings in the world, but we know that Julian Assange has a lot of the goods on these people too, and he's a very big player and a key witness in a lot of these crimes as well. So anyways, that's very interesting. Okay, so what I want to emphasize to you guys the most is whatever happened, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that pedo is still alive or not because the good guys are in control. They know what they're doing. These White Hats and the people working on Q team, they have been planning out this military operation for years and years, decades even. Everything has been pre-planned out. Every single turn of events and outcome has been anticipated. This is the best of the best. Our guys know what they're doing, and there's no room for error. And when you read Q and you look at the 1 year deltas and you read the stuff that Q posted a year ago and see how it relates to stuff that's going on today, and a lot of these posts from Q a year ago, the news becomes relevant exactly on that 1 year delta. These people are brilliant, and this is the biggest military operation the world has ever seen, and it's been carried out with perfection and absolute precision. So if the good guys didn't want Jeffrey Epstein dead, you guys, then he didn't die, okay? He's not dead. And if he is dead, it's because they wanted him dead. Okay, so let's just go over some stuff with Jeff Epstein that happened before his quote-unquote death. And then we'll get into some theories about what really happened with Jeff. So, All right. So suicide happens a day after 2,000 pages of documents were released, exposing more names tied to Jeffrey Epstein's elite pedophile ring. So here are some of the other big players involved in this elite pedophile ring that brings down celebrities, models, singers, presidents, members of the royal family, CEOs, you name it. You name some of the biggest, most powerful people in the world, and some of these people are involved. So some names that were released: Bill Gates, Doug Bands, the former Colombian president, Hyatt Hotels CEO Tom Pritzker, which is interesting because I got into my surf accident at the Hyatt Hotel, ironically. And Naomi Campbell, Heidi Klum. Naomi's gonna have a really big problem. If you go through the flight logs, her name's all over the flight logs. She hung out with Epstein and his crew a lot, and so did Heidi Klum. Heidi Klum was good friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell was the woman that procured teenagers and children for Jeffrey Epstein, and the other woman that was in charge of procuring women and children for Jeffrey Epstein, his elite pedophile rings, is Ray Chandler. And Heidi Klum was good friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. They hung out at parties together. They did events together. There's pictures of them, I believe, together. And, it's just ironic because a few weeks ago, Heidi Klum did a photo shoot in a bikini wearing that had pizza and pasta emojis. And that just goes to show you how sick and brazen these people are. Her good friend is involved in working for a pedophile and a child sex trafficker, and she was also friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And you'd think that people involved in this ring, even if you're not directly working in this ring and or raping and trafficking kids, your best friend is. And your best friend was procuring children to be tortured and raped for Jeffrey Epstein. You would think that people tied to these people would, try to be on the DL a little bit, maybe tone things down. Oh no, Heidi Klum, Jeffrey Epstein gets arrested and she's flaunting a bathing suit that has pizza and pasta symbols on it, and we both know that pizza and pasta are code symbols for pedophilia. And so it's just, these people are just so brazen. They're so sick. They're total sociopath, narcissists. They're just disgusting. We also found out that former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson was in the released documents, and so was, current governor, I can't talk, it's been a long week. Current New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson was on the list, and former U.S. Senator George Mitchell was on the list. And from what I'm hearing, they both were buying children from Epstein. So, as I've been saying for a very long time, Jeffrey Epstein's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more names that are about to come out, and we're still just at the tip of the iceberg, even with these names I just listed off. Okay. So let's talk about what potentially could have really happened with Jeffrey Epstein, and just to let people know so I don't get hate and annoying comments, this is now speculation. I'm going to talk about theories I have. So I'm not reporting these things as fact. They're just theories. But I will say this as a fact. Jeffrey Epstein did not commit suicide. I can guarantee you that 100%. Jeffrey Epstein, I will repeat, did not commit suicide, all right? Now what really happened with him, aside from that, is going to be speculation, okay? I think that there are two possibilities of what could have happened with him. If he is dead, if Jeffrey Epstein is dead, I believe that it possibly could have been an execution. And I believe he possibly could have already faced a military tribunal and been executed. I believe that's what happened with John McCain. And I also believe that's what happened with George Sr. All right? So I think that's one possibility. So if he is dead, The good guys, the white hats, they already got all the evidence they needed. They already got all the testimony that they needed to prosecute others. And if he is dead, I believe that he did go through a military tribunal and he was executed. I don't know this for sure. It's just a theory, and I'm not 100% sold on it, but I definitely think it's a possibility. However, I read another theory last night that I thought was very plausible as well. And this theory is that he was murdered by the Clinton mafia, and it was staged to look like a suicide. And that the murder was allowed to happen by the white hats. So the theory is that the good guys knew that Clinton mafia would try to take Jeffrey Epstein out, because as we know, anyone that has dirt on the Clintons seems to die in a fatal accident or in a suicide. This has been going on since Bill and Hillary Clinton were, governor and first lady of Arkansas. So that goes way back to, I believe, the late 80s. Yeah, in the late 80s, early 90s, before Bill became president. People around the Clintons that have information on the crimes that they've committed have been dropping like flies literally for the past 3 decades. And there's a lot of people on that list that have died. I mean, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and tell me that they've had a family member or a friend that had dirt on the Clintons, or they got involved with the Clintons and they found out they were, involved in some kind of crime or corruption scheme and they were knocked off. They died of a heart attack or a suicide, or they died in a plane crash. I mean, it's just crazy. These people will take down an entire plane filled with hundreds of people to get one target. They have no problem killing hundreds and or thousands of people to take out one target. Think about that. Okay, so the theory is that the white hats allowed Jeffrey Epstein to be a sitting duck and allowed the Clinton mafia to knock him off in a sting operation so they could bust the Clintons, in the act. And again, I don't know if this is just a theory. I don't know if this really happened, if this is true, but I mean, that would be kind of brilliant. And we do know that the Q team and the white hats have been conducting sting operations ever since President Trump got into office. We know that Election Day last year was a big sting operation to catch the voter fraud. So these kinds of operations are very common, and they're happening a lot under President Trump's presidency. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if they allowed the Clintons to knock him off so they could bust the Clintons in the act of another Arkancided. Okay, so after Jeffrey Epstein was quote-unquote murdered, a photographer just happened to be there to capture photos of his body being pulled out on a gurney. The photos of this body are all over the internet, and a lot of people have done side-by-sides of a real picture of Jeffrey Epstein alive next to the picture of his alleged dead body. It's not Jeffrey Epstein. The nose is completely different. The ears are different. It's clearly not him. So again, if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the one coming out on that gurney, then who was that? And where is Jeffrey Epstein? So I do not believe he committed suicide. I'm not convinced he's dead. And that was not Jeffrey Epstein that was pulled out on that gurney. You guys can all go online and look at the side-by-sides of the pictures of the dead body, allegedly, of Jeffrey Epstein coming out of the jail cell. And you can compare those pictures to pictures of Jeffrey Epstein. Pictures of Jeffrey Epstein that we know is actually Jeffrey Epstein, but the ears are completely different and the nose is completely different. The nose on the dead body is way bigger than Jeffrey Epstein's nose. Joanne tweeted, "Oh, I didn't know that reverse nose jobs were a thing these days." I mean, it's just, it's laughable. So, and what else happened? He was allegedly on suicide watch, but was allowed to commit suicide. And apparently the footage from the jail cell went missing. So there's no surveillance video, of whatever happened to him. It's just, someone said on Twitter the other day that anyone that believes that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide at this point is the actual conspiracy theorist, and that's so true. Okay, so here's something else interesting that can tie into this and could tie into the theory that, the White Hats maybe already put him through a military tribunal and executed him. And I want to remind people that if you follow Q, you know this, but a lot of stuff that we're seeing in the news now happened a long time ago, happened months ago. So, we're not getting the real news in real time. If you follow Q, you know that. So, for example, when President Trump met with Kim Jong-un from North Korea, the first meeting that was announced in the news was not the first time that President Trump met with Kim Jong-un. If you follow Q, you know that President Trump first met with Kim Jong-un in China, in the Forbidden City. So that's months before it was reported in the mainstream media that President Trump met with Kim Jong-un. So, people that just follow the mainstream media have no idea that a deal with Kim Jong-un in North Korea was made months before it came out in the news. When President Trump met with Kim Jong-un, the time it came out in the news, they reported it as if that was the first time he met with him. But again, if you follow Q, you know that he already had met with him months prior and made a deal with him. So, Q talks about future proves past. A lot of stuff that's coming out now actually happened a long time ago. So it goes back to my theory that he could have been through a military tribunal and executed already. It's possible because we've seen that happen before, and Kim Jong-un is a great example. And I want to go back to what I said when I first opened this video. The most important thing that you guys need to understand is that the White Hats are in control, and whether he's dead or not, it doesn't matter. Because the White Hats would not let anything happen to him unless they had everything they need to bring down the entire ring. So, again, don't worry. People need to calm down and not react when they first read something in the news. The good guys have this under complete control. I am 100% confident of this. And if they did not want him to die, then he's not dead. And if they did want him to die, then that's why he's dead. But regardless if he's alive or dead, if he is dead, I guarantee that the good guys have enough information to bring down the whole ring. And that's all that matters, is that this entire ring is brought to justice. And going back to what Q says about we have it all, I want to remind people that these idiots that went to Jeffrey Epstein's island to rape, torture, and traffic children, they all brought their cell phones, they all brought their devices, and they all brought their devices not only to the island, they brought their devices into the underground facilities where they were raping, torturing, trafficking children. Well, it was the cabal that made it legal to spy on us through the NSA. What they didn't factor in is that same NSA that they weaponized would be used against them by the good guys, by the White Hats. And that's exactly what's been happening. So all of these places where the cabal took their phones, everything was recorded. So every single person that hurt a child, that trafficked a child, that raped a child, that did Lord knows what to a child, it was recorded. And it was recorded by the same people who are committing the crimes. It was recorded, what I'm trying to say is, the reason why it was allowed to be recorded is because of what the bad guys did to the NSA to weaponize it, to spy on all of this. That's the irony of all of this, is that there's so many evil things that the cabal did to spy on us, to strip us of our rights, and have a police state over us. And now it's boomeranging. Now that police state is being used on them to take them down. And it's pretty amazing. So another thing I wanted to point out, I was watching one of Sarah Ruth Ashcraft's videos yesterday, and she brought up a really good point that I hadn't really thought about, that's really interesting. Sorry, I just timed out. She pointed out that it's legal for the government to spread propaganda in times of war. And it's legal for the government to spread that propaganda on the American people. And so, you know, if people think that it's conspiracy theory or it's very pie in the sky for the white hats to stage Jeffrey Epstein's death, well, remember that propaganda has been legalized. So they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that. And again, going back to how, you know, laws that the cabal passed to hurt us, to spy on us, to have a police state on us, who was the one that signed the bill into law, making it legal for the government to spread propaganda? It was none other than Barack Obama. Good old Bathhouse Barry. Did a little research on this. So again, you know, another law that Barack Obama authorized to hurt us is now being used against him and his network. Okay, one of the lesser known provisions that have snuck their way into the NDAA over the years was a small piece of legislation tacked onto the NDAA for fiscal year 2013, signed into law in that same year by then President Barack Obama, named the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. It completely lifted the long-existing ban on the domestic dissemination of U.S. government-produced propaganda. All right, and you know what else is really interesting about this? Michael Hastings, who was knocked off by the deep state, he's the one that broke this story. This is a story from 2012. Late last Friday, BuzzFeed reporter and Rolling Stone contributor Michael Hastings broke what looked like a big scoop. Congress was quietly planning to lift a 64-year-old law preventing the U.S. government from using propaganda on its own citizenry. When I read that, I got chills. Michael Hastings was exposing a lot of corruption with the Obama administration. In 2012, in June of 2013, he was murdered in a car accident. And what we learned from WikiLeaks years later through government documents that were released is that our government had the capability to remote control cars, which could inevitably kill us. So Michael Hastings was driving in Hollywood, I believe it was down the Sunset Strip in his car, and lost control of his car. And he was driving on a street that, I don't know, the speed limit was like 35 or 40 miles per hour, and his car, I think, was going 110. So the theory is that, you know, someone from the deep state was remote controlling his car and crashed it. And he knew he was going to die. He told friends that he knew that they were messing with him and they were targeting him and that they were going to try to kill him. And a couple of days after he told at least one of his friends this, he got into the car accident. Oh, so sad. So sad. Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein is allegedly dead. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But you know what? Let's talk about how this is so amazing and how important this is for the Great Awakening process. So Jeffrey Epstein is announced dead. And it's being reported as a suicide. What's amazing about this is that there are so many people who aren't even Trump supporters, who aren't conservatives, they're not Republicans, chiming in on this, and they're saying there's no way that this man who was trafficking kids, with the Clintons, to all the elites, committed suicide. And so it's great. The fact that Jeffrey Epstein was trending again on Twitter. Clinton body count was trending on Twitter right after this happened. But then, of course, Jack Dorsey changed it from Clinton body count to Trump body count, which wasn't organic. It's great because this death is so suspicious. Regardless of what happened with the death, we know he didn't commit suicide, but whether he really was knocked off by the Clinton cabal, or, you know, if the White Hat staged this to look like, you know, a hit for propaganda purposes, it's all good, because the news of his suspicious death is just waking up so many more Americans. We have liberals now, you know, looking into the Clinton ballot account. We have liberals looking into the cabal. We have liberals now looking into these elite pedophile rings. And then we had President Trump retweeting Terrence Williams. So Terrence Williams did a video about how he doesn't believe for 1 second that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. And he was talking about how so many people that have dirt on the Clintons end up dead, or they end up committing suicide. And this video is so funny. If you haven't watched it, you have to watch it. And he's like, people are calling me a conspiracy theorist, you know, for saying that Jeffrey Epstein is going to be suicided. And here we are. He's been suicided. He's like, you know, there's been dozens and dozens of people who've been suicided that have had dirt on the Clintons. And he's like, I don't want to know anything about the Clintons. I know nothing about the Clintons. He's like, I don't even want to know Bill Clinton likes to eat his boogers. It's the funniest video. President Trump retweeted that video of his. And of course, the mainstream media went crazy, and the mainstream media headlines were President Trump retweeted a conspiracy theory about the Clintons. But it's amazing. And it to me, it shows that this is all part of the plan. I think part of the big goal of Jeffrey Epstein's death was to get people looking into the Clintons, was to get people looking more into Jeffrey Epstein, was to get people looking more into all the suspicious deaths happening around the Clintons. So it's no mistake that President Trump retweeted Terrence talking about this, because now we have so many people who, you know, who are looking into the crimes that the Clinton family have committed and all the suspicious deaths surrounding them that maybe never looked into this stuff before. And so new eyes are, you know, looking at all these things. New eyes are looking at Pizzagate. New eyes are looking at Jeffrey Epstein. New eyes are looking at the Clintons' crimes. And the most important part of the Great Awakening, and I've been saying this for a very long time, is that for the big takedown to happen, for all these people to be taken down, the big mass arrest to happen, the public needs to be awake. Team Q could do the rest tomorrow, but they're waiting to do it at a point in time where enough of the country and the world are awake so that there is not mass chaos, and so there's not a civil war that's going to break out. And that can't happen until a good percentage of the population is awake. You know? So, you know, we had all this stuff trending yesterday, and, you know, the false flag shootings were finally out of the news cycles. And we even had a lot of people who have blue check marks on Twitter chiming in on this. Let me read one tweet, or a couple tweets. So, you guys know that I was kicked off Twitter for talking about Pizzagate, the child sex trafficking. I was not only kicked off Twitter, before I was kicked off, I was verified at one point on Twitter. So I did have a blue check mark. And Twitter couldn't have that. So when I got into the feud with creepy Chrissy Teigen, they unverified me. They used that Twitter feud as an excuse to unverify me. And because, you know, they couldn't have someone that's verified on Twitter telling the truth about these elite pedophile rings and these child sex trafficking networks. And Pizzagate, that was verified, that you just couldn't have that. So they used the Chrissy Teigen feud as an excuse to unverify me. But this is what's amazing. So we had yesterday the co-founder of Wikipedia tweeting about child sex trafficking, elite pedophile rings. I'll just read this tweet to you. He wrote, "Here's the real news regarding Epstein Pizzagate that nobody is reporting. Let's begin here. What the hell has been going on in all the other elite social circles and before and after this period? Does my question puzzle you? It shouldn't. You'd think this is a one-off. If all these super powerful people are capable of systematic child trafficking and abuse in this case and at this particular period of time, don't you think they and others like them do it in other places and at other times? Do you think this is just a one-off?" And he just goes on and on. He starts talking about Nexium. Wow. Go check out his Twitter account. It's at Lsanger, at Lsanger. But he's just going on and on about these elite pedophile rings and these child sex trafficking networks, and it's just amazing to see someone with a blue check mark talk about these things. Here's another tweet he wrote. So we need to learn the real news. Elite pedophilia exists, and elite pedophilia rings exist. I rarely use all caps, but I'm going to this time because I feel like screaming. We need to start caring about the existence of elite pedophilia and elite pedophilia rings. Thank you, Larry. I've only been screaming that for 3 years now, but better late to the party than never. All right, that's it. Except, actually, there's just one more thing I want to talk about real quickly. You know, when Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested, the mainstream media was talking about how they were all excited to link President Trump to... They were so excited to link President Trump to